Carney is facing some criticism for his position in this conflict, his initial statements. This weekend, former Minister of Foreign Affairs Lloyd Axworthy condemned his support, saying, quote, "We invoke international law and the rules-based international order when adversaries engage in unlawful actions, but abandon those same rules entirely when it's the Americans." And with CUSMA renegotiation or talks or reapproval fast approaching, Axworthy argues Canada should evaluate how connected it is with the U.S. And for more on all of this, we are joined by Minister of Foreign Affairs Lloyd Axworthy. He's here with us now. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So Prime Minister Mark Carney offered a larger, longer, more nuanced position today. We just heard it there, but I'm wondering, does that sort of change your criticism of what he had said?
Katie, it hasn't changed the fundamental, which is the United States and Israel committed an act of aggression against the UN Charter, that the evidence supporting it was not there. There was no imminent threat. There was, as Mr. Trump said, he had some intuition there might be. And thirdly, I think it is setting a bad precedent. I mean, the one thing that I think Canadian diplomacy over the years has always understood, that our best security is at putting sort of guardrails, sort of ways of stopping big powers from throwing their weight around. And no one is bigger threat right now throwing his weight around than Donald Trump in the United States. So we're all of a sudden giving him still an open pass. I'm glad to see the Prime Minister backing up a little bit in terms of his rhetoric, but he still hasn't made a fundamental issue about where does Canada stand on defending an international law, and when it's our ally, our trade partner, that's committing the transgression.
What do you think the Prime Minister's response should be then?
I think it would be important to really fess up with Canadians. I hope. I know he's away, and all good wishes to him, but I think Parliament has to be brought into this discussion. I mean, we're lacking in this country effective dialogue and exchange. We all know we're going through these major changes, and that the Trump world creates very uncomfortable situations for Canada. But we can't sort of leave the direction simply up to a few people in the Langevin bloc. I think what we have to do is engage Canadians and say, here's the options. And one thing I'm very convinced of, because I've had people talk to me, is that as a middle power, we should be doing everything possible to buttress, support, and the international systems that we have to try to restrain not just the United States, but China and Taiwan and Russia in Ukraine. If we don't do that, if we simply say, well, we can provoke and talk about the Russians doing it, but when the Americans do it, we don't murmur a beep, that's hypocrisy.
What do you make of the argument put forward by the Prime Minister that, citing the actions for decades now of the Iranian regime, the oppression of its people, the murder of its citizens, murdering just recently, even though this is not a new trend or a new thing that happens with the Iranian regime, but just in January with tens of thousands of protesters killed. Do you think that the Prime Minister is trying to make the argument to Canadians that because this regime has been so horrific to its people, that, the overall goal is worth it there?
He may be trying to make that argument. I don't think it's a relative one. To begin with, this attack took place when there were negotiations going on for a nuclear settlement. Remember, Trump was the guy that tore up a multilateral agreement that Obama had made. So all of a sudden, he's providing a solution to a problem he created. I think Canada should be a little bit more forthright in assessing that the Trump administration, probably nobody knows better than you because you watch it every day, has an ambition for imperialism. He can do what he wants, whenever he wants, to whomever he wants, and he will be the guide of that. And as a result, we bypass all the architecture we put in place over the decades to try to make sure that power isn't simply willfully used by some individual who happens to have some ambitions about his own grandizement. And I think that's why I think it's important to have a more broad discussion. Have the ministers come and talk about it. I did raise the issue that what's happening is that we've embedded all kinds of Canadian military people in these sort of American-based centers, and the Prime Minister said, Canada isn't out there front with badges on, but if you're sitting in the same room and they're planning an invasion or an attack or something, do you simply say, I'm going to the restroom? There's no protocols. We don't understand what they are. It's a murky area. That's a very serious part of, and that's part of the readjustment I think Canada has to start making, and to do it in a more forthright way.
So your concern is, because of the deep integration between the Canadian defense system, the American defense system, the way our militaries work together, you're concerned that even though the Prime Minister says Canada wasn't involved in this, we were not involved in the planning, we were not involved in the consulting, that you believe that, in fact, that there will be touches of Canadian sort of involvement?
I'm not sure how you could avoid it. I mean, our planes in the Caribbean give intelligence back to the Americans about where the boats are. Well, once they get that, then if they want to shoot the boats out of the water, we say, well, it's not our problem. So I think we have to be, to use the Prime Minister's word, a lot more realistic about what's going on, and not sort of kind of feather dust these actions. And I'm not here to say that everything that Trump does well. Actually, I think most things he does are wrong, and they don't fit with our values, and they don't fit with what's good for the world, or the security. But where we, I think, have made this mistake is that this endorsement will be used by Trump. He's already calling Keir Starmer, saying, well, you have to give us some basis to work out of. Trump is going to pick up on the Prime Minister remark and say, well, okay, you said you're on our side, now prove it. Show us it. Kind of pony up what you're prepared to do.
Sort of on that point, earlier today, Donald Trump in the Oval Office, he singled out Spain. He's got some longstanding concern about Spain. He's angry with the leadership of Spain for not committing to spend 5% of its GDP on defense spending. But he's also mad that he did not sort of see the response he wanted. I want to play a clip for you of what Donald Trump had to say about Spain. Listen to this.
Well, some of the European nations have been helpful and some haven't. And I'm, very surprised. Like Spain has been terrible. In fact, I told Scott to cut off all dealings with Spain, but they were unfriendly. And so I told him, we don't want to, Spain has absolutely nothing that we need other than great people. They have great people, but they don't have great leadership. So we're going to cut off all trade with Spain. We don't want anything to do with Spain.
Listening to that, to Donald Trump making that announcement. The thing is, when Donald Trump says something, you have to wait until you actually get a piece of paper to see some sort of action or however it's going to happen. But even that threat where he says that we're cutting everything off with Spain, is that a risk that Canada needs to be mindful of if it's going to take a stand?
I think that our best protection against that is making sure that we have other countries, to use the Prime Minister's recommendation, of a coalition that stands up. But if we're piecing off, and we were basically out of step with a lot of other countries in our climates, then he's going to pick us apart one by one. I mean, Trump is you want to talk about an evil man, he's an evil man. There's no question about it. And he is doing everything in his power to totally create this disruption that the Prime Minister's talked about in the world. And I think what we have to start doing is to say, we can't keep looking back in the United States and saying, well, they're nice people, and they are, but the reality is the government isn't. And I think we just simply have to take we should be saying, what do you mean Spain is doing the wrong thing? Spain has just opened its doors to large numbers of refugees, unlike most other countries. They're trying to be a humanitarian country. We should be applauding that and not letting this guy sort of wield a big sort of baton against them. I really think, just watching it, there is something fundamental wrong going on, and he is perpetrating lawlessness in his own country, and he's perpetrating lawlessness internationally. And Canada, for a long time, has always been standing up for those laws. And I think we look weak right now. And I'm hoping the Prime Minister, if he's now beginning to sort of do some reflection on it, will come back and open up a proper discussion in Parliament where it needs to happen and let Canadians be heard.
All right. Thank you, former Foreign Affairs Minister Lloyd Axworthy. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Nice to be here. Thank you.